Whoa, we're half crossed, yeah, yeah. Both my hands right there, or there, but on one side of the stick only. That's what we're talking about today. I'm a professional. So if you remember from my positional overview video, I was talking about, crossed playing, where your hands reach across the fretboard, half crossed, where one hand reaches across and the other plays on the same side, both hands on one side of the stick, and uncrossed, where you don't reach across at all. And today we're going to be talking about half crossed position. So I just want to say that I think half cross is a really great approach for playing with a band because you don't have to worry about playing all the notes all the time, and you can focus on making the most out of one side. You see half-cross playing specifically, like bass playing half-crossed, with Tony Levin's work in King Crimson and in Liquid Tension Experiment a lot, and with John Mayung a lot in Dream Theater. They will use crossed and go over to the treble side, but for the most part they're really sticking with the bass side of the stick. And those are some really good classic stick playing examples of half-cross position. So half-cross can actually do quite a bit. When you take it to the bass side of something, it actually gives you a more linear approach to scales than a one-handed approach would be. If we want to play every note in a major scale in a linear fashion with one hand, it's going to look something like this. It's a lot of movement. You can kind of reduce that with half-crossed and just go like this. Much faster. You can also kind of like sit in this space between like a bass and a guitar part and really take advantage of the range of the stick. I've got a part in the upcoming Geff album that does this, I think, pretty well. On the last song on the album, Back from Space Earth, it gets really nice and quiet, and I introduce this theme. And you can see I'm using half cross to kind of access these upper notes. This would be almost impossible, if not outright impossible, to play one-handed. Those double stops especially are incredibly difficult one-handed. And playing these arpeggios is possible, but very clumsy. Right? And as soon as you bring it to half-cross, the whole thing opens up for you. You can also get some really, really slick, heavy riffs. Let's take a look at the song off of the first Geff album, Manifest Destiny's Child, also the last song on that album. There's a part where I'm doing half-crossed on the treble side. So I start like that on the treble side, and then halfway through the part, I take the exact same shape and I put it on the bass side. And it gets this like really nasty growl. I've got like some really cool distortion going on, and Tyler has switched from chords to doing his own line over the top of it, and it's just a really like intense kind of guitaristic, very, very like progressive metal approach. And actually, this half-cross technique is all over the first Geff album. On the treble side and on the bass side as well, that whole big splinter riff. And in the Treble with Doorways. And I have a bunch of moments of it too on the new Geff album as well. as you can see, it makes for you know, lines that would be difficult in the intervallic nature of the fifths tuning to just kind of pop right out. It gives you a more linear access to the tuning, and you can start to look at it as playing different roles. On the treble side, it actually allows you to get less linear with the treble side, which I find very cool. You know, the treble side being tuned in fourths kind of naturally lends itself to more of a guitaristic mindset, in my opinion, as I'm coming from guitar. So when we bring two hands into it, all of a sudden you can really break away from that kind of linear nature of it and do some pretty cool stuff. Like that. Looking at the first Geff album again in the song I Am the Lamp That Stomps, there's this section where I start playing these arpeggios that are just straight up in two parts of the treble side. And then it actually evolves from there to something even further. And you'll see as my two hands start to converge, you know, the kind of range that half cross can give you. And then right back to the main riff, which is also in half crossed. Half crossed also makes sustain and a more guitar-esque chordal approach to the treble side very much possible. Right before I Am the Lamp That Stomps, on the first album, we have a song called Yocto, and it's a brief interlude where I repeat this guitar-esque chordal figure as Josh Merhar, our drummer, takes a solo over it, and Tyler helps to add ambience to the background. You can hear right away that this kind of thing would be absurdly difficult to play in the same guitaristic and sustained sense with just one hand. I just can't do it. And, you know, as kind of proof of concept, this lick is something that I wrote when I was primarily a guitarist before I even got the Chapman stick, like years and years ago, in like 2010. And I'd been hanging on to it because I had no idea what to do with it. I liked it so much. And it wound up making its way in an altered form into the Trouble with Doorways. Kind of closer to the end of the song. It's this like the only pretty and melodic moment in that whole tune, which is just a tune of like gnarly riffs and ugly sounds. Great way to start an album. So then, you know, we brought it back in its much more somber form there. But, you know, even here, to get that sustained sound, I need to be able to kind of have something to pull off onto. You use your fingers as a kind of a capo, you know, just a quick temporary one. So as your right hand, is playing all these like extra notes, you have something to pull off onto, and it just sustains and adds this thickness. You know, without it. It's just not as interesting without the sustain, I think. I think that the sustain factor that half-crossed gives you makes it so much richer and more beautiful to listen to. Half-crossed on the treble side, taking that guitar-esque idea of chords one step further allows you to access these huge halfway between a guitar, halfway between a piano chords, right? There's this lick on the first song of our upcoming album, Macroaggressions, where I'm taking open voicings and stacking them on top of each other. And I wind up doing it in this like crazy shred way. It winds up sounding something like this. Let's see if I can play it. Nope. Something like that. And when I'm slowing that down, and if I'm playing all the chord structures, without arpeggiating them, then what I'm doing is these big extended chords running diatonically through a D major scale. And all that is this open voicing with the next open voicing starting on the fifth. Diatonically in D. So you've got A major, because in D major the fifth degree of the scale is A. And on top of that you have E minor. Then you've got B minor. And on top of that F sharp minor. And then you've got C sharp diminished. And on top of that G major. And you've got D major with A major on top. And finally E minor with B minor on top. All together that sounds like this. And when I arpeggiate them, I just play one hand after the other, one note at a time. That's all I'm doing, just really fast, kind of just like a rhythmic press. Honestly, it's not that complicated, but that's not something I'd be able to do with one hand. There's no way I'm going to be able to go... This is a nightmare. There's just no way I would ever be able to do that in a clean and concise fashion consistently. And especially since I'm not playing the bass side, it would be wrong in that arrangement for me to play the bass side because there would be too much going on. Tyler is playing this really cool half-crossed riff himself on the bass side that involves mixing ranges similar to what I was doing much earlier. He's doing something similar to that, but based off of a theme that's already been established in Macroaggressions. And it's such a thick arrangement already that if I were to then try and add something on the bass side to it, it would just sound like garbage. And so I've got both of my hands free to do this shred lick, and it's the only instance of shred that I do on the entire album, which I'm very proud of. I wanted to just be like, yeah, I can, but I'm not gonna. That's how I do it. I just stack chord shapes on top of each other with each hand and then arpeggiate the whole thing. So aside from just some cool rolls that you can approach with half cross, there are some interesting techniques that I've found. One cool thing that you can do if you're taking a solo or if you're playing a line on your treble side, if you want to do some kind of shreddy thing, with one hand and then slide into your destination note. That sounds pretty cool. Something like that. I'll use that technique every now and then. Another cool thing that I like to do is do rapid hammer-ons and pull-offs with my right hand while leaving my left hand as an anchor point. Another just a cool moment of doing some quick stuff, you know, half crossed on the treble side, or really any side, kind of allows for some really cool shredding to come out. I also consider harmonics a half cross technique, and I consider that because you have to use both hands to get them. Like that. And as I had mentioned earlier, there's that really cool octave flip thing. That mostly is a composition technique, but it does fit really well with the half-crossed concepts. So all these examples will be written out, and you can find them as exercises on my Patreon page. Go check that out. There's lots of other videos like this, and performances and arrangements and exercises and all sorts of good stuff for you if you're interested in really expanding your knowledge of the stick and of tap guitar and stuff like that. And yeah, take these concepts, play around with them. Again, you know, I feel this functions very well in a band setting. It works fine for solo playing too, but you know, the reality is that you're usually playing one or at the most two voices when you're playing half-crossed. So it can be kind of a thin sound, and if you're going for something bigger, you might want to switch to crossed or uncrossed for that. But still totally valid. And yeah, that's about it. Keep exploring.